Hi, gang, it's Adam.
And Patrick.
Coming up on today's episode, we celebrate Women's History Month by sharing the stories of some lady legends in our feature segment On the DL. As always, we cover the latest Disney news and close out the show with some quick D. All that and more on today's episode of Gays Do the D.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
Patrick Pants On Kazuki.
We'll see about that. Adam Diva Hummel.
Oh, do you think of me as a diva?
I only think of you as a diva in the Latin sense of goddess.
Okay. Did you just want to pull out the fact that you knew what the Latin for diva was?
I did. I've been holding that in my pocket for a while. I wanted people to know just how smart I actually am.
So smart. I'm so impressed. Okay, I'll take that. I am a goddess. I'm a god, yes. How are you doing, Patrick?
I am doing well, Adam. I'll tell you what. I've been on a journey lately to get back to where I was pre-COVID times. I'm talking about my body, Adam. Now, listen, all bodies are beautiful.
Yes.
It's clear, it's true, it's a fact, it's simply a fact, but this body is really testing the fiber strength of a lot of my favorite shirts lately. And I'm happy to announce that I'm very close to being back to pre-pandemic Patrick.
Listen, we love you regardless of where you're at.
Thank you so much.
Various Patrick forms. Pre-pandemic Patrick, mid-pandemic Patrick, post-pandemic Patrick. We'll take any Patrick we can get.
Thank you so much. I think my superhero power is shapeshifter, maybe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think a lot of people can relate to that, Patrick. And I think a lot of people can relate to the fact that maybe it's difficult to shift back once you've made the shift.
Yeah, the older I get, the harder my powers have to work to get back.
It's true. I'm right there with you, buddy. I feel it. I feel the tension. I feel the lack of forgiveness within the various waistbands of various pants that I own.
Yeah, I would say my clothing is feeling the most tension lately. They're the most tense.
Yeah, you got to work on that relationship, buddy.
It's
maybe
true.
Some therapy, some fiber therapy.
I have to drink some more fiber, in like soluble fiber.
To fit into fibers. Yeah,
to fit
I get
into
it.
my fibers. Yeah,
I get it.
Oh, dear. Well, that was a long journey. How are you, Adam?
I'm good. Is phlegmy a thing? I'm phlegmy. I'm Flemish.
Yeah, it's the season.
Yeah, I'm feeling the phlegm to see, I guess.
That needs to be a Minnesota State Fair shirt. I'm feeling the phlegm to see.
Oh, yeah. It is that wonderful time of year, that beautiful transition where the snow has all melted and there's just a bunch of dead foliage on the ground. And therefore, I guess I'm breathing it in. And every morning it's like an episode of Mad Men where they woke up and they were just like coughing from like smoking 50 cigarettes the night before.
Yeah, it's not great times in normal circumstances, but now, now it's a real guessing game of what's going on.
Oh, to be sure, Patrick, as soon as I hit the kitchen, I'm like smelling things. I'm smelling the coffee. I'm smelling things to make sure that it's still working. And fortunately it is. And there are no other symptoms. So this is just full on spring transition gunk.
Yeah. Eating candy is my new COVID test. If I can taste the candy, I'm okay.
Thank you for choosing candy as your COVID test. I think that's really the most conscious choice you can make. The smartest choice. Candy. If you can taste candy, you ain't got the COVID.
Hard to say why I'm on this weight loss journey.
Oh, Patrick. Oh, my. Well, here we are. Speaking of spring just around the corner, St. Patrick's Day is this very week.
It is indeed. Are you Irish at all, Adam? I don't even know that.
I've had a little Irish in me, if you know what I mean.
I'm sure you have. I'm certain of it.
I don't think I am any Irish, actually. Are you, Patrick?
Strangely, yes. I am actually around 20-25% Irish.
And is that just like knees down to the feet? Is that the portion of you that's Irish?
My ankles are Irish.
Yeah. I always knew that about you. Those ankles, they are constantly dancing a jig.
They are indeed. They can't be stopped.
Are you going to celebrate in any way? Are you a green beer connoisseur?
I am not. That is garbage in my opinion. But but I do enjoy, I don't know if authentic's the right word, but it's pretty close, a corned beef dinner every St. Patrick's Day.
For sure. Yeah, delicious. Delicious.
Delicious indeed. I found a new recipe for some soda bread, so I'll be making some Irish soda bread as well.
Wow, you are really getting into it.
Again, hard to say why I need to drop a few pounds.
I was going to say, there is an Irish famine option as well.
Yeah, that's the journey I'm on currently, but I'll put a pause on it on St. Patrick's Day.
Well, you got to celebrate, right?
You do indeed. Celebrate your heritage, everybody.
Celebrate your heritage and good times.
Celebrate good times, indeed. Are you a St. Patrick's Day celebrator? Are you wearing like green necklaces and taking your top off on the streets?
Everything you just said, yes.
Great.
I mean, green is so flattering on me. You've seen it. You've seen the glorious kind of glow that green gives me. So, yeah, I wear green.
Yeah, if there's one thing I know about gingers, it's that greens and reds look great on you.
Depends on the shade. If it's a Kelly or darker green, we're all good. But man, if you even veer slightly into lime, we are in trouble.
Noted indeed. Well, all that being said, a happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody.
Yeah, make the most of it. This is, hopefully, the last St. Patrick's Day you'll experience during the panny.
Happy St. Panny's Day. That sounds inappropriate, but here we are. Well, speaking of celebrating, Adam, we have yet another, 2 weeks in a row now, new Patreon member to celebrate.
Wow, we are very lucky. Luck of the Irish, Patrick.
The luck of the Irish, indeed. Our new Patreon member is Stephanie. Stephanie has recently joined our Patreon family.
Stephanie, welcome to the fam. We couldn't be more thrilled to have you join us.
And when we found out that Stephanie had recently joined our Patreon family, as so many have this year, which is amazing. This year is so young. We've already had like 5, I think, new Patreon members. We thought we need to do another giveaway. So it's not happening yet. We have some things cooking. Some things in the kitchen are on fire right now. I don't know how to cook, I guess. Is that how it's supposed to work?
I'm very nervous for your St. Patrick's Day meal, if that's the direction we're headed.
Good thing no one's coming over for dinner.
Yes, we've got some irons in the fire, as they say.
We do. So hopefully, fingers crossed, stay tuned next week, everybody. We'll have some exciting announcements to talk about.
And speaking of exciting announcements, we also have a new Tweedle joining the ranks. Juin is joining our Tweedle family. You can find Juin on Instagram at Binky UK.
Ooh, Binky UK. I like it.
Yeah, Juin sent us the sweetest DM. Seriously, y'all, you just flatter us and we love it. So just keep sending in those very complimentary DMs. It really boosts our egos and makes our years, right?
It's really all we have to look forward to in the way of compliments.
That's all we really have in our lives. So keep them coming. But Juin, thank you so much for reaching out to us. And we're so glad to have you as a new listener. And again, Patrick, he said he was going to go back to episode 1.
The bravery of it all.
I don't know if there's anything scarier that you can do with your life than listen to episode 1 of this podcast.
It seems like it was so long ago. I mean, it was quite a while ago, but boy, were we babies.
We were just babes.
Speaking of babes, Adam, we have some babes of Tweedles. Is that a phrase? A babes of Tweedles.
Babes of Tweedles. That was actually the working title for Babes in Toyland.
Yes, Babes in Tweedleland has come back to us in the form of some feedback from last week's episode of our spoiler-free review of Raya and the Last Dragon.
I was surprised, Patrick. I was expecting more feedback from our Tweedles, but I suppose a lot of it could be that they just haven't watched it yet. Some of them may have opted not to pay the $30 to watch it. They're waiting for the free option that's coming later on this year, and that's entirely understandable. So we do have some feedback we need to kind of sort through, and people are really loving this movie, Patrick.
They are loving this movie indeed. And we should say before we get into this feedback, before anyone skips ahead, we're not going to spoil anything in the feedback, as we did not spoil anything in the review last week.
That's right. We got your backs. If you have not seen this movie, don't worry. We're not going to let anything escape our lips that would ruin the experience for you.
Let's go to our very first feedback. Juin is already dipping into our DMs.
Contributing already. We love it, Juin.
Juin says, absolutely loved it. Amazing characters and a beautiful world, and Raya might be one of my new favorite princesses. Also grateful for yet another hot Disney dad. Prayer hands. I mean, well said, Juin.
I encourage all of our Tweedles to only submit emojis when they're commenting on things, and we will have Patrick read only the emojis.
I only speak emojis lately. It's become very fluent in it during pandemic times.
Prayer hands. We also heard from Miles, who you can find on Instagram at Wonderful World of Miley. Miles says, I was blown away. Such a beautiful story, and the animation was absolutely stunning.
Stunning indeed. Stunning indeed. Justin also writes into us from Instagram at jmcarth1. Justin says, loved Raya. 3 exclamation points. Best recent Walt Disney animation film for sure. My only concern is the lack of strong villains in recent Disney movies. I can't think of the last amazing villain. Dr. Facilier? ?
Interesting point, Justin. Yeah, I guess, I don't know. The villains have changed, have they not? They've kind of shifted as of late and become maybe more complex, more layered, as opposed to the kind of very large personality villains we grew up with.
Yeah, villains have sort of almost been like a mindset as opposed to a character lately.
Yeah, I live a villain mindset every day.
It's true. It's a real inside-out situation happening.
But that's a great point, Justin. And it'll be interesting to see how, like, Ursula is handled in the live-action remake of Little Mermaid, right? Like, will she be as colorful or as kind of broad a character as she was in the animated movie?
Such a good question. We could have a whole episode based around a discussion of Disney villains lately.
You're right. We need to add that to the list. Patrick, Judy, would you add that to our notes for this episode? Thank you. By the way, Patrick, we hired Judy.
Thanks so much, Judy.
Moving on, we heard from Andy, who you can find on Instagram at Andy Heath Puppeteer. Andy says, absolutely loved this. A predictable plot, but beautifully told. The characters were well balanced, and the art direction was hypnotic. Very refreshing, and yet totally familiar.
Ooh, we talked about that last week, didn't we? The familiarity of this new world, strangely.
Yeah, we did. And how comforting that is, especially now when things are kind of beyond our control. It's nice to have something that feels familiar, but also new.
Agreed. Moving on, we have Clint writing into us from Instagram at Clint_R_Skywalker. Clint says, just listen to your Raya review, and I have to say I fully agree with you that this was a fantastic movie. During the discussion, you mentioned not knowing why Cassie was replaced. As someone who was super excited for this, I read various interviews about the production and thought I'd share. Raya's character changed, and her voice no longer fit. From what I've read, they added some levity to her and needed an actress who could do both the serious and comedic, which is how they landed on Kelly Marie. I read that as well, actually, after our discussion. Clint goes on to say, this is a pretty good article, and he linked an article to us called Why Kelly Marie Tran Replaced the Original Raya and the Last Dragon voice actress, which we will also link in our show notes, so you can read that. It's a great article. He goes on to say, also, I too was struck with the language and remember reading that Kelly Marie actually helped influence some of the language choices and pronunciations to make them feel more authentic. But can we just talk about the queer undertones between Raya and Namaari? It seemed so obvious to us, and now Kelly Marie has confirmed in an interview, and he linked another interview that we will also link into our show notes called Kelly Marie Tran Thinks Raya Had Romantic Feelings for Namaari in Raya and the Last Dragon. And then lastly, Clint says, with as rich a lore as Kumandar has, I hope we revisit it and maybe see a blossoming romance between the characters on screen.
Interesting, Clint. Patrick, were you picking up on any kind of romance between Raya and Namaari?
I absolutely understand that sentiment. I can totally see where that's coming from. I don't know that I necessarily went there first, as opposed to just seeing two strong female friends.
I don't know if my lesbian meter is off. It might be off. It may actually not even exist for all I know. But I did not pick up on any kind of like tension between the two of them, aside from just like the tension based on their circumstances.
Along those lines, it's sort of interesting to think back in Disney history that there's not a lot of female characters that have an equal counterpart in a female friend, right? We have Anna and Elsa, but they're sisters. And then we have Tiana and Charlotte, but Charlotte's not in the movie for very long. But there's not a lot of female relationships in Disney history.
That and Patrick, not a lot of female relationships outside of familial relationships where they're of equal cognitive ability or like smarts, so to speak. Both Raya and Namaari are both incredibly intelligent and physically capable. So they really were very well matched.
Yeah, again, we could go on for days about this, but there's something interesting in Disney history and in cinematic history in general that when you have two females, they're generally going against each other, right? There's a good one and there's a bad one, and women fight is like the message in movies, which this actually sort of is untangling that mess of like women have to fight, but they can't be friends.
Yeah, interesting. And I'm totally game for exploring more of Kumandra and the relationship between Raya and Namaari. Absolutely.
Totally game indeed. Well, thank you for those thoughts, Clint, and thank you everybody who wrote into us.
Thank you so much. And Patrick, with that, we swing on in to This Week in Disney History.
Let's swing in indeed, Adam, starting with the youngest, as per usual, This Week in Disney History on March 15th, 2006, in a first for both Disney and Apple. The very first full-length movie was sold through Apple's iTunes store. Adam, do you have a guess what movie that may have been?
Oh my gosh. The very first full-length movie was sold. I'm going to say Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Great guess indeed. You are absolutely incorrect. The very first movie, full-length movie sold through Apple's iTunes store was Disney's High School Musical.
Oh, of course. Well, when we're talking about the cultural impact those two films had, same level, right?
Absolutely the same. How interesting, though, that Disney was the very first studio to have sold a movie through Apple.
I wonder if that was somehow tied to their relationship via Pixar. In some way, they were able to kind of sneak in and get in on that action.
Well, I guess also High School Musical had a very popular soundtrack, so I imagine both were sort of sold in tandem.
Yeah, Disney knew it had a good thing. It was like, this is the first thing we need to sell. The kids, the new generation, they know about the technology. They know how to download this thing. Let's go at them. Let's make them the target audience for our first film.
They know what's up. Well, moving on, Adam, 30 years ago, on March 15th, 1991, Disney Afternoon Avenue opened up in Disneyland next to It's a Small World. The area was a colorful street of cartoon buildings inspired by the 2-hour programming block Disney Afternoon, where guests could meet characters from Tailspin, Rescue Rangers, and DuckTales. The area lasted only 6 months and was replaced by Mickey's Toontown.
I know a lot of our Tweedles have memories of this area. And in fact, they kind of resurrected it a bit for the 80s night that Disneyland did a couple of years ago. So I think there's this really strong affection for that kind of nostalgia. And I think a lot of people remember visiting that area of the park.
Yeah, for sure. I wish I had seen it. There's sort of a nod to it in Animal Kingdom with the DuckTales characters having returned and Chip and Dale are there. I wish they would expand that and bring it back. What a delightful meet and greet that would be.
Yeah, absolutely. People want those photos with those characters.
For sure. Well, let's move on to our last item this week in Disney history. Adam, 60 years ago, on March 16th, 1961, The Absent-Minded Professor, starring Fred MacMurray, was released. Now, a few fun facts about this movie. Although Disney had been producing live-action film in color for a number of years, The Absent-Minded Professor was produced intentionally in black and white to accommodate some of the special effects in the movie. Also, the Medfield fight song featured in the movie was written by the Sherman Brothers, making this their very first song in a Disney movie.
Wow, this movie featured their first song in a Disney movie?
Very first song. And it wasn't a super popular song. It was just sort of not a throwaway song, but it was in the movie, but it wasn't like, a record-breaking song. But they did hire the Sherman Brothers to write it.
Incredible. And we all know about Fred MacMurray, right? We all know the kind of iconic Disney historical moment tied to him, right?
Well, very first Disney legend.
How about that, folks, huh?
What a tie-in to our episode.
What a tie-in to our feature segment. Well, Patrick, that was some major history you dropped on us, my friend.
Major history.
Do you think it's time we cover some major Disney news?
I think we ought to. Adam, I think we ought to. You're getting a little squirrely. It's time to move on to the news.
It's the only way to calm me down.
Take your news, Adam. Take your news. Adam, life was like a hurricane in Duckburg, but alas, the race cars, lasers, and aeroplanes are shutting down as DuckTales comes to a series finale this week on March 15th. The Emmy-nominated and #1 rated show on Disney XD will close out with a 90-minute finale entitled The Last Adventure. According to executive producer and writer Matt Youngberg, the episode will focus on the DuckTales family. A quote from Youngberg, "Maybe not family in the traditional sense, but how a family is not just the people born into it, but the family that you make. The big takeaway is found family. What is a family and what makes a family?" Co-executive producer and co-writer Francisco Angones says that he and Youngberg always knew the series would represent cartoons from their childhood, love, and family, and that it was always meant to be a limited series. A quote from Angones, "The hope is that we opened enough storytelling possibilities to keep these characters around so that other people can have fun with them. Hopefully characters like Della and Webby and our versions of the nephews stay around, and if we come back and did another run, that would be fun too, but I feel like what we got was a definitive love letter." The series finale will air March 15th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Disney XD and will run on loop for 24 hours. But fear not, everyone. These ducks have not shaken their last tail feather. Debuting March 29th, Tweedles can tune in to an all-new podcast called This Duckburg Life, a spin on the popular podcast and radio show This American Life. The podcast will be hosted by Huey Duck for Duckburg Public Radio and will highlight stories from Duckburg. The series will run for 7 episodes and will include the cast of DuckTales reprising their roles, including Danny Pudi as Huey, Ben Schwartz as Dewey, Bobby Moynihan as Louie, Kate McCucci as Webby, Beck Bennett as Launchpad, David Tennant as Scrooge McDuck, and of course, Disney legend Tony Anselmo as Donald Duck. This Duckburg Life will be available every Monday on Disney XD YouTube, Disney Now, and Disney XD VOD.
So sad to see DuckTales paddle its way into that sunset. But the podcast, Patrick, do we want those duck voices just right up in our ear holes like that?
We do indeed. I heard a little clip, a preview of one of the future episodes, and I think it's going to be really funny. This cartoon is so good, so funny. I recommend, if you have not seen it yet, go take a look. It is so nostalgic, yet so future thinking in what Disney cartoons will look like.
A little bit of the old, a little bit of the fresh. I love it. And, that whole message that they have about the found family, if there's any group that can relate to a found family, it is the LGBTQ plus community.
It's true. It's very Drag Race of them to to have that message.
Very Duck Race.
Ooh, drag ducks.
It wasn't as successful as I wanted it to be.
Well, that's sort of the story of our podcast, isn't it?
On Tuesday, March 9th, the Walt Disney Company held their annual shareholders meeting and made a number of exciting announcements. Now, before I continue, Patrick, didn't it seem like we just had a shareholders meeting? I don't get how this works.
I think they're holding so much that they have to share quite often lately.
So they're sharing shareholders meetings?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's what I'm going with.
Okay. Let's start with the big announcements, shall we? First up, Disney CEO Bob Chapek announced that Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, the new trackless ride based on Ratatouille, will open on October 1st in Epcot's France Pavilion in Walt Disney World. Le Crêperie de Paris, the new table service and quick service restaurant in the France Pavilion expansion, will also open on October 1st. Patrick, we're going to be there. Let's get some crepes.
I'm so excited about the crepes. I'm going to eat so many of them.
So many crepes going into Patrick's mouth hole. Chapek also announced that Disneyland Resort will reopen in late April. As we reported in last week's episode, the resort could reopen on April 1st, but Chapek noted that it will take Disneyland and DCA a few weeks to recall cast members and get the parks up and running. Chapek also noted that Marvel Avengers Campus will not open alongside the Disneyland Resort theme parks and will instead open later in 2021. And speaking of Marvel properties, Patrick, Black Widow, remember the Black Widow movie?
Vaguely. I vaguely remember it.
Chapek confirmed that the film is still slated for release in theaters on May 7th, 2021, over a full year after it was originally scheduled to premiere in theaters. Personally, my money is on a simultaneous Disney Plus Premiere Access release of the film for $30, and if I'm not full of vaccine by May 7th, I will happily pay that $30, Patrick.
Even if I am chock full of vaccine by then, I'm not sure I'll be ready to go into a packed movie theater yet.
Psychologically?
And just like cleanliness wise, I don't know if I'll fully be showered by then.
So it's not the theater's cleanliness, it's your own hygiene.
Correct.
I've never been more grateful to record via Zoom. As for Disney Plus, Chapek confirmed that the streaming service has now surpassed 100 million subscribers globally. That is bonkers.
Holy crepes.
Holy crepes. Moving to Disney Cruise Line, Chapek stated they expect Disney Cruise Line to resume operations by fall 2021 and that DCL's newest cruise ship, the Disney Wish, will be sailing in the summer of 2022. As for the Disney College program, Chapek feels confident that the program will resume by the end of 2021. While no official plans or eligibility requirement changes have been made, Chapek stated that extending the eligibility requirements to those that missed out on the program would be a great idea. And last, but certainly not least, Disney Executive Chairman Bob Iger hopped on the call to reiterate that he will, in fact, still be leaving the Walt Disney Company as planned on December 31st, 2021.
We'll see about that.
Patrick, come on. What would it take to have Bobby stick around?
Listen, I've heard this story before. I'm leaving, I promise. And then here we are a year later, and he's still kind of running things. Adam, I'm quitting the band. The Magic Band, I mean.
I was nervous for a second that we were going to need to find a new tambourine player, but we're good.
No, I'm not quitting our band, our tambourine and kazoo band that we've started in quarantine.
It's a niche type of music that only certain amounts of people want to hear.
Just the two of us, really.
Really just the two of us, yeah.
But I probably actually won't be quitting Magic Bands because I really love them, but it was a fun segue into this next story, I'll tell you what. So launching later this year, Disney World will be offering the Disney Magic Mobile service on iPhones, Apple Watches, and other smart devices. So this new service will offer all the conveniences of a Magic Band, but will be 100% contact-free. Guests will now be able to create a Magic Mobile Pass through the My Disney Experience app and add it to their smart device's digital wallet. All you'll have to do is hold it near an access point instead of having to press Mickey to Mickey like you do with the Magic Band. Now, for all you Magic Band members out there, don't worry. The Magic Bands aren't going away. In fact, Disney plans to introduce more Magic Bands in new colors and designs later this year. Once Magic Mobile rolls out, guests can choose to use one or the other or alternate between the two options. And old-school guests staying on Disney property can still opt to pick up a Key to the World card at the front desk of the resort along with an abacus, I guess.
It's not bring your own abacus.
Nope, indeed not. The Disney Magic mobile program will roll out later this year and will roll out in phases. Apple devices will be the first to get this new feature.
Love it, love it, love it. I'm totally on board. An idea occurred to me, Patrick, when I first read this story. What if Walt Disney World did this crazy kind of thing where they completely eliminated guests' ability to snag fast passes 60 days out and instead just opted for a system that, I don't know, allowed you to grab fast passes as soon as you entered the park? I just came up with this off the top of my head.
Yeah, this seems like a new idea that you've just stumbled across. Well done. Well played, you.
Yes, trademark Adam. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm fully on board with just like getting everything put onto my phone, loaded onto my phone, adopting more of a Disneyland style way of securing fast passes and accessing them and getting into the parks. I just want it all on my little phone.
Totally agree with that. I actually do like the Magic Band as like a little fashion accessory, you know what I mean, to have while you're in the parks. I think it's a cute little extra to have on you, but absolutely the phone is enough as well. Like, let's not waste resources and make all these Magic Bands. Just have your phone at the ready.
I see your point, too, like a nice complimentary Magic Band to, say, a turquoise bracelet or a cubic zirconia ring.
maybe Adam, instead of the Magic Band, we can have like magic iPhone covers instead, and that would be the new accessory.
Okay, that's an idea you just put out into the universe, and now, Patrick, someone's going to snatch that up and trademark it, and it's not going to be ours anymore.
I'm fine with it. Listen, it's COVID times. Anything goes.
You know, Patrick, from time to time on this podcast, you and I have been known to wax poetic about the male form.
Once or twice.
Very rarely do we comment on men or men we find attractive or men we find appealing or men we just want to get to know better.
Tom Holland, so hot.
Why did that not even occur to me that would be brought up right off the bat? Yeah, of course you'd go to Tom Holland.
I often go to Tom Holland, yeah.
Often go to Tom Holland. But in today's episode, we're going to forget all about men, Patrick.
Okay.
I mean, just try to steer your mind away from men if you can.
Got it. I'm going to put my meditation practices into action.
Because it is, as we mentioned in last week's episode, Women's History Month.
It sure is. We only celebrate women for 30 days out of the year.
And really, there's just the one day where they get the major celebration. And the rest of the 30 days, we're like, oh yeah, it's still Women's History Month.
Yeah, why not?
But not on this podcast. Today we're going full Women's History Month. We're really going to celebrate women, and I really mean it, Patrick.
You have your serious face on. I know that you're for realsies.
We're going to celebrate some lovely ladies. And now I'm thinking about Les Mis, and now I'm thinking about Les Dis.
Oh, we have to cast that at some point.
I want to see that musical. Give us Les Dis.
That seems inappropriate at best.
Yeah, but we are going to be talking about lovely, influential, intelligent, groundbreaking women in this segment on the DL, in which we, of course, talk about some very influential Disney legends.
Disney legend ladies, absolutely. It strikes me when I was putting together my list, again, as was the case when we were doing Disney legends people of color, Disney legend ladies, not a lot of ladies out there on the Disney legend list.
There are not a lot of women included in the list because, let's face it, folks, it was a boys' club back in the day. But what's really cool is that the ladies that were included in on the shenanigans of early animation, of planning Disneyland, of working on Walt Disney World, of working in administration, all of these ladies that were a part of that world really stand out and made some significant contributions because they had to. They were held to a different standard than their male counterparts.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of groundbreaking, pioneering women came up through the Disney company, for sure. And not just for Disney, but for entertainment at large around the world.
And as I was glancing through our show notes, Patrick, I'm excited to say that I only was aware of just one of the two Disney legends that you're going to be talking about. So I'm excited to learn about the second.
I bet I know who you are familiar with. I'm excited to educate you on the other one, for sure.
And as we've been doing with our last couple of On the DL feature segments, Patrick and I are also going to be introducing someone who was closely associated with the Disney company that we feel should be included on the Disney Legends list.
Yes, absolutely. A Disney Legend to be list. So we have two current Disney Legends each and one Disney Legend that we would like to introduce to the Disney community.
So let's get into it, Patrick. Let's celebrate Women's History Month. Let's celebrate some Disney legends, and let's recognize someone whose contributions to the company should be celebrated. Patrick, start us off. Who is your first Disney legend?
Thank you so much for letting me go first. I'm going to start with the one that I think you're most familiar with on my list, Adam, and that is Virginia Davis.
Little Ginny Davis. That's the one I know.
Little Ginny Davis, absolutely. Inducted in 1998, interestingly, under the category of animation. And I sort of understand why that category, but I feel like it should be under acting instead.
Yeah, it seems like that. I understand the tie into animation, though, absolutely.
For sure, for sure. So, Virginia Davis was born in 1918 in Kansas City, Missouri. Interestingly, who else lived in Kansas City, Missouri during that time, Adam?
Can't think of a single person. Continue.
Can't think of one person. So at 2 years old, Virginia Davis began taking dance and drama lessons. And at the age of 4 years old, Walt Disney himself saw Davis in a Wernicke's bread advertisement. At the time, he was working on producing his first live-action animated hybrid called Alice's Wonderland. He was immediately inspired by Davis's long, blonde, curly hair and charming smile, and he hired her to play Alice. So Virginia Davis became Walt Disney's very first human star.
You know, I was also discovered in an advertising campaign, Patrick.
For bread, indeed, yeah.
For bread, yeah. They were like, let's find the whitest person we can possibly find to showcase this white bread.
Wonder Bread. It was Wonder Bread, everybody.
Yeah, but with me shilling it, it was less Wonder Bread.
It was a wonder while you were doing it.
Why was I even involved?
Who can say? Who can say? But back to Virginia Davis. So a few years later, Laugh-O-Gram Studios dissolved, and Walt and Roy decided to move to Los Angeles, where production would be easier and cheaper, and they started the Disney Brothers Cartoon Studio. Almost immediately, Winkler Pictures signed Disney and contracted them to produce a series based off of Alice's Wonderland called the Alice Comedies. Walt Disney convinced Virginia Davis's family to move from Kansas City to Los Angeles so she could star as Alice in the series, which they did. Davis would ultimately appear in 13 of the Alice comedies over the next 2 years, which can be attributed to keeping the Disney Brothers afloat before the birth of Mickey Mouse and the Walt Disney Company. After her reign as Alice, Davis would continue working in the theater and on screen. Among her credits, a West Coast tour of Elmer Rice's street scene and the movie The Harvey Girls with Sid Charisse and Judy Garland. She also earned her degree from the New York School of Interior Design and later became a decorating editor for the magazine Living for Young Homemakers in the 1950s. And then in 1963, she pivoted yet again and started a career in real estate. Over the years, she stayed in contact with the Walt Disney Company, giving interviews and making appearances at conventions. And as I said, she became a Disney legend in 1998. Virginia Davis lived a very long and fulfilling life, and she passed away in her home at the age of 90 on August 15th, 2009. And as we've been told over and over, of course, it all started with a mouse, but we can absolutely thank Virginia Davis as Alice for paving the way. And as per usual, a woman did all the heavy lifting, and a man, or in this case, a male mouse, took all the credit.
Mickey, how could you?
How very dare you, Mickey Mouse?
Can you imagine having the gumption to approach a little girl's family and be like, yeah, come move to California with me, why don't ya?
For sure, for sure. But again, I mean, this was, back in the 1920s when if you had an in with Hollywood, you took it. You took it immediately.
I love the fact that she shifted careers so many times. I think that really speaks to her intelligence and the fact that she had a really curious mind and was willing to explore all of these areas in her life.
Yeah, I think at some point she just sort of, I don't know if she lost interest in the arts, but it just wasn't for her anymore. And so she said, let me go to school. Let me figure out what I am passionate about. And it was design and homemaking and real estate.
Also, how are you going to top working with Walt Disney at a time when film was new and you were an absolute star in his little movies?
Yeah, she was the very first Walt Disney star, and then she worked with Judy Garland. I think she was like, I think I'm done. I'm done here. I've made my mark.
Well, that's fantastic. I think very few of our Tweedles will know the background on Virginia Davis, but she is a fascinating woman and a huge part of Disney history.
Absolutely monumental. I mean, as I said in the story, the very first human star for Disney and sort of the launching pad, which ultimately became the Walt Disney Studios.
Well, speaking of launching pads, Patrick, have I got a segue for you?
So sensible.
I'm going to tell you about the first woman ever hired by Walt Disney Imagineering in a creative capacity.
Tell me all about it immediately.
We are launching into the stratosphere one Harriet Burns, who was inducted as a legend in 2000 in the Imagineering category. And Harriet, Patrick, she worked shoulder to shoulder with the men in the model shop. She wielded saws, lathes, and sanders, and she helped design, prototype, and build not only theme park attractions featured in Disneyland and Walt Disney World, but she contributed significantly to the 1964-1965 New York World's Fair.
Astounding.
Harriet was born August 20th, 1928 in San Antonio, Texas. She received her bachelor's degree in art from Southern Methodist University in Dallas and went on to study advanced design for another year at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. In 1953, she moved to Los Angeles with her husband, William, and their infant daughter. She accepted a part-time position at Dice Display Industries Cooperative Exchange, where she helped design and produce props for television's Colgate Comedy Hour, along with interiors and sets for Las Vegas hotels, including the Dunes. Remember Vegas, Patrick?
I do. I've been yearning for it lately.
Yeah, I want to go back. During her time with Dice, Harriet was asked to spearhead the creation of the Southern California tourist destination, Santa's Village, located near Lake Arrowhead. When Dice went out of business in 1955, a co-employee who had once worked at Disney returned to the studio and invited Harriet to come along. Harriet was subsequently hired to paint sets and props for the new Mickey Mouse Club television show, and she soon began coordinating the show's color styling, and she even, Patrick, designed and built the famous Mouse Clubhouse.
Iconic, right? I mean, this is iconic work.
Absolutely. She was in charge. She was leading these really big projects for Walt Disney Studios. And while at Disney Studio, she shared a workstation with a fellow Disney employee named Fred Jorger. Jorger was a model builder for WED Enterprises, which we all know is now referred to as Walt Disney Imagineering. And he was working on prototype models for the future Disneyland theme park. In addition to her job as a set builder, Harriet began working with Jorger in Disney's model shop, building miniature prototypes of Disneyland buildings and attractions. And Patrick, if we know one thing about me, it's that I love miniatures.
You love to be a giant.
I love to feel like a giant. I love looking at things that are very tiny and done in such detail. I realize now, taken out of context, this could sound very crude.
Yep, it does.
So I'm just going to move on. WED Enterprises originally consisted of just 3 members. So it was Harriet Burns, Fred Jorger, and Wathel Rogers, who we've talked about before on the podcast. And it eventually became known as the WED Model Shop. One of Harriet's first assignments was to craft a model of Sleeping Beauty Castle. She continued to work on Disneyland expansions after the park's grand opening. She also helped construct Storybook Land canal boats and designed all of the singing birds in the Enchanted Tiki Room, the first audio animatronics attraction at Disneyland. Similarly, she created the birds for Mary Poppins. Another of Harriet's jobs at Disneyland was figure finishing, which involves applying paint and other finishes to attractions and mannequins to create a finished look. Harriet personally designed and painted the set pieces and underwater figurines for the submarine voyage ride.
I, too, am doing some figure touches on myself, though, these days.
That's good. You're giving yourself consent for those touches.
Here and there. No, this is, I mean, the list that you are, and I'm sure you're not done yet, rattling off here. I mean, just, it's amazing, such visible work, right? Work that millions and millions of people have come to love and know within Disneyland.
Yeah, she was involved in so many projects. And you're right, I'm not done because she also worked on Matterhorn bobsleds, New Orleans Square, Pirates of the Caribbean, and the Haunted Mansion. In addition, she worked on attractions featured at the New York World's Fair, as I said, which opened in 1964. And those attractions she worked on included Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln and the Carousel of Progress. On occasion, when Walt would introduce new theme park attractions to television audiences, she would appear with him in segments of Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color. And I know we've all seen those segments on YouTube, and she's in the background, very much in the background, working on things like the Enchanted Tiki Room. Harriet retired from Walt Disney Imagineering in 1986. She was honored in 1992 with a window on Main Street, USA in Disneyland that reads, "The Artisan's Loft Handmade Miniatures by Harriet Burns." She was the very first woman, Patrick, in Disney history to receive a window on Main Street, USA.
Ooh, amazing. That's really astounding, actually.
After retirement, Harriet remained an active member of the arts and music community in Santa Barbara, California. She passed away on July 25th, 2008, at the age of 79 in Los Angeles, California.
Well done. Not for passing away, but well done for all of your work.
Yeah, anybody can pass away, but can you get a job at Disneyland and work on so many iconic attractions? Can you do that?
I think this is going to be a recurring theme in our episode today, Adam, but it's crazy to think that the contributions of these women is so vast and so important, and yet they were, as you said, even on TV in the background, right?
That's right. When I hear these accomplishments, I keep thinking about what Ginger Rogers once said of working with Fred Astaire, the fact that she was doing the exact same choreography he was, but doing it backwards and in heels. And I feel like that applies to these women who worked for Disney. You know, they were accomplishing these great projects for film and for the parks, and yet they were doing it in dresses and heels and living up to this aesthetic that the men didn't have to live up to.
It's absolutely true. And I mean, we even do it here on the podcast when we talk about and celebrate like the 9 old men, right? It's like, yeah, they were for sure there. They were a boys' club, but they weren't the only ones who were there at the time.
And they were given the opportunity just because of their sex. They didn't have to work that much harder to kind of work their way into that environment.
Exactly. None of them had to be the first.
Yeah, 9 old men. So, I mean, you're okay, but there are people who really had to fight for their roles, okay?
Right. There may be 9 old men, but there were 900 amazing women who supported them and worked alongside them.
That's poetry, Patrick.
Thank you so much.
Well, let's keep going, Patrick. Who is your next legend?
Well, I'll tell you what, Adam. This next legend is my kind of legend. She was a legend in the parks and a legend in the community. I'm talking about Mary Ann Mang, who was inducted as a Disney legend in 2005 under the category of parks and resorts.
Mary Ann Mang, a name I am not familiar with, so I'm excited to hear everything you have to say.
Well, she has something very special that she contributed that you're going to know as soon as I say it, why I was drawn to Mary Ann Mang. So, Mary Ann Mang started her career in 1960 after writing a letter to Walt Disney himself seeking employment. Disney, as he was wont to do, felt there was something very special about Mang, and he gave her a job in the, at the time, newly established sales promotion department at the Disneyland Hotel. After a year there, she moved over to the convention and tour sales department for Disneyland, and in 1972, she was promoted and became the very first woman to be promoted to the position of manager within Disneyland. For the next 8 years as public relations manager, she hosted celebrities, royalty, and other VIP guests who visited the park. During her career, Mang took it upon herself to lean into supporting the community, adding community relations to her public relations position. A quote from Ms. Mang: "Walt Disney was clear in his wishes that his park and its cast members should always strive to give something back to the surrounding community." With that in mind, she saw an opportunity to consolidate all of the employee public service efforts into the company-wide Volunteers program, with the mission to develop opportunities for Disney employees to contribute their time, expertise, and effort to make a positive impact on the community while furthering the traditions and ideals of the Walt Disney Company. And as many of our Tweedles know, the Volunteers program is still thriving today and making an enormous impact on the community.
Do you know what I say to that? I say, yes, ma'am. And in this case, ma'am stands for Mary Ann Mang.
Oh, have you been thinking about that since I started talking?
I just thought of it while you were talking about 10 seconds ago, yeah.
Got it. Well done, you. Yeah, as everyone knows, I am all about this Volunteers program. I love it. It's usually the news stories that I select if I see them in the news. And I did not know until I started writing this article that we have Mary Ann Mang to thank for the Volunteers program.
How smart of her to consolidate all of those cast members' efforts into one program. You know, I think that when you're talking about a company as big as Disney, it could get quite scattered. And so it was so smart to kind of funnel all that energy into one space or one area and really concentrate the efforts to maximum impact.
For sure, yeah. It was a huge publicity boost for the company when you see it all happening in one news story as opposed to teeny tiny ones throughout the year. Another notable accomplishment of Mary Ann Mang's was developing the Disneyland Creative Challenge program, which recognizes junior and senior high school students who are interested in the creative and fine arts disciplines. Beyond her contributions to Disneyland, Mang was dedicated to service in many other capacities. Just in her free time, Adam, she served on the board of directors at the American Red Cross, the American Heart Association, the Boys and Girls Club of Anaheim, and the Volunteer Center of Greater Orange County. She also served on local councils and committees, including the Anaheim Arts Council, the Anaheim Chamber of Commerce, the Anaheim Memorial Hospital Medical Center, and the Susan G. Komen Foundation. Just casually in her spare time.
Incredible. Wow.
Yeah, she was a dedicated human being. In 1994, after 34 years of service, she retired from the Walt Disney Company. On the occasion of her retirement, California Congressman Robert K. Dornan said, "Throughout her entire career, Mary Ann Mang has exhibited extraordinary leadership, skill, and professionalism. She has been a wonderful role model for her coworkers and an exemplary inspiration and role model to us all." That same year, after her retirement, she was honored with a window on Main Street, USA, above New Century Jewelry. The window reads, "Good Neighbor Foundation, caring and giving come from the heart, Ms. M.A. Mang, Director." And in 2005, when she was named a Disney legend, she said in her acceptance speech, "I really lived my dreams. It was an e-ticket ride all the way."
So smart of her to continue that Disney branding right into her Disney legend speech.
Even in her retirement, she had the Disney speak.
What a remarkable woman, and to have that kind of energy and that level of engagement with not only the place where you work, but also the community at large, like going beyond the walls of Disneyland and the Disney Corporation to volunteer and organize for all of those incredible organizations. She really was quite a lady.
Yeah, it's very clear where her passion and her spark lived, and it was so lucky that she landed in this position. Maybe not lucky. I mean, she earned it, absolutely. But it was so smart of her, I guess, to use her position to really foster her love of the community and her love of spreading joy and community service through her position at Walt Disney.
Yeah, very rarely do your passions so tightly align with your role in your job. And she just fit right into that area so perfectly.
It's so interesting to think of all the people that Walt Disney hired, and he hired quite a few, but the ones that he specifically found, and that quote that we always say, he found that spark in somebody and he saw something in them, they always go on to do extraordinary things.
Isn't it interesting when your boss believes in you, how things can happen?
When just anyone at all believes in you, you know?
Yes, good point. Well, Patrick, excellent choice. My next choice for Disney legend is Ginny Tyler, who was inducted as a Disney legend in 2006 in the category Film and Television. For some, their chosen profession is a family legacy, and such is the case with the original Disneyland Records Disneyland storyteller, Ginny Tyler. She was born Mary Virginia Erlandson in Berkeley, California on August 8th, 1925. Ginny's family, whose lineage stemmed from the Snoqualmie tribe of the Puget Sound region, spent her childhood in the Seattle, Washington area where her family had lived for generations. Her mother, who could play the organ while whistling bird calls, taught her how to tell stories and simulate animal sounds. Ginny's flair with these talents first put her before the radio microphone in the 1940s, and by 1951, she was hosting her own daily children's show as Mother Goose on KOMO-TV. The show was entitled Magic Island. She was also getting more and more work off-screen for her vocal talents, and in 1957, you guessed it, Patrick, she headed to Hollywood.
Sounds like my story.
It's just like your story. You're so good at animal sounds, too.
Thank you.
One of her first jobs after arriving in Hollywood was voicing Olive Oyl on a Spike Jones recording of I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. Work on more novelty records quickly followed. By the early 1960s, she had joined the Disneyland Records stock company, narrating beloved vinyl records of Bambi, Babes in Toyland, Hans Brinker, and more Mother Goose. When the original Mickey Mouse Club was re-edited and repackaged for syndication in 1962, Tyler was appointed head Mouseketeer live from Disneyland. A Mickey Mouse Club headquarters was constructed inside the Main Street Opera House, later home to Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, where Ginny hosted a live 15-minute daily segment of the program. So, Patrick, she was kind of brought in during the syndication of the original Mickey Mouse Club to introduce segments live from Disneyland.
I love that. I feel like I have definitely seen clips of her, or definitely at least heard some of her vocal tracks before. I can hear it in my head right now.
I guarantee you absolutely have. And if some of you think, do I know what she looks like? You probably do, because she bore a striking resemblance to original Mouseketeer Annette Funicello.
Yes, she absolutely did.
Children could register as official Mouseketeers, complete with membership card, and Ginny, often in the company of Roy Williams or Jimmy Dodd, was on hand for greetings and autographs at Disneyland Park. Now, Patrick, we've actually talked about Ginny before on the podcast. She voiced the amorous young female squirrel in The Sword and the Stone and sang for several of the barnyard animals in the Jolly Holiday sequence of Mary Poppins.
That's right. That's how I remember that name.
She was that female squirrel that just wanted to get it, you know?
That's right. She was into a boy.
She was all about that wart. She wanted that wart. For other studios, Ginny voiced Wendy in the 1963 TV series Casper the Friendly Ghost, Space Damsel Jan and the Black Widow in Space Ghost, Sue Richards in The Fantastic Four, Flirtatia, which, Patrick, I believe is your current drag name, yes?
Yes, it is.
Flirtatia, the Lilliputian in The Adventures of Gulliver, and all the female characters in the first 13 episodes of Davy and Goliath. Ginny also provided the voice of Polynesia, the parrot, who taught the good doctor how to talk to the animals in Dr. Dolittle. Along with frequent Disneyland Records co-star Dallas McKennon, she provided most of the other animal voices for the musical spectacular Dr. Dolittle. Her parrot vocalizations were also heard on the Jack Benny Show and the Lucy Show. She was just all about creating those animal noises, Patrick, and it went back to her Native American heritage.
She was the OG Frank Welker.
That's right. Frank Welker was not even a glimmer in his father's eye, and Ginny was out there making it happen. Ginny referred to her days with the Disney Company as, quote, the most awesome part of my life and truly a dream come true. She remembered a day at Disneyland where she was chatting with Walt Disney, as one does, Patrick, just casually chatting with Walt Disney about the beautiful aspects of the park. And she stated, quote, I was raving away to Walt about how wonderful Disneyland was, and he said, and that goes for my Disneyland storyteller too. She stated, I have never felt prouder in my entire life. Can you imagine Walt, who never gave compliments, really giving you a compliment like that?
I would have passed out, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, to his Imagineers, he would just say good enough, and that was like extremely high praise. So to receive a compliment like that from Walt was a very big deal. Although Tyler later retired and moved back to Seattle, she still did some recording for local productions. She passed away on July 13th, 2012 in Issaquah, Washington at the age of 86.
Ooh-wee, what a contribution she made.
And an interesting bridge, right, from kind of the old guard of the original Mickey Mouse Club to the repackaged version of the show. And because she was kind of like the voice of Disneyland Records, she was really the connection children had to these fantastic stories that Disney was telling. Some of them hadn't even seen the films, but they had these little records they would listen to, and it was Ginny's voice they were hearing tell that story.
For sure. And I think we'd be remiss to say it's incredible, specifically at the time, for someone of Native American heritage to have been given, and I hate to use that word, this opportunity. She absolutely earned it, and I think you know what I'm saying. But that wasn't the case very often back then. It still isn't the case very often right now. So what an accomplishment and what a celebration.
And for her not to have to, for lack of a better word, hide that aspect of her life, like it really was her upbringing and her honoring her heritage by being such a fantastic storyteller and being able to simulate these animal sounds that celebrated her family's lineage.
Absolutely. Well done. That was a great pick for you.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Ginny, for all your contributions. And that means, Patrick, that we're moving into now the women that we are recommending for legend status. Disney, I hope you're paying attention.
I think it's clear that they are, Adam. They are definitely one of our tens of listeners.
10? That's pretty optimistic, Patrick.
Yeah, I like to think positive. I'm rounding up, obviously. Well, here we go. Yes, we are now talking about our picks for future Disney legends. And I have one, Adam, that she's just really getting started in her career with Disney. So this is definitely going to be, I think, for my money, a definite future Disney legend, at least a Disney legend in the making. I'm talking about Carmen Smith.
Very exciting. I don't know who Carmen Smith is. I'm excited to learn all about her.
Well, you're about to learn everything you need to know about Carmen Smith and her contributions to Disney. She's, as I said, already worked on incredible projects and continues to move the company forward in its strides to become a more diverse and inclusive company. So, Ms. Smith is from New York, where she graduated from Hunter College with a degree in communication arts. She then went to New York University, where she earned her master's degree in international administration, and in 2007, she received an honorary doctorate from the Metropolitan College of New York. Smith began her career with Disney in 2000 as vice president of the talent development programs for the Disney ABC television group. In her position, she oversaw and managed the Disney ABC Writers Fellowship Program, the ABC Directors Fellowship Program, the Talent Development Scholarship Grant Program for filmmakers, writers, and directors, the Writer-Director Summer Institute at the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and she executive produced the Micro Mini Television Series Project. In her position, she also functioned as a liaison with diverse creative communities, nonprofit arts institutions, entertainment industry guilds, colleges, and universities to nurture talented emerging writers, actors, and directors. Now, currently, Smith has 2 titles with Disney. Her main title is Vice President of Creative Development for Walt Disney Imagineering. In this role, she is responsible for developing a diverse pipeline of products, themed experiences, and people to enhance Imagineering's talent and creative processes. Now, her other title, and the one that I'm very drawn to, is Vice President of Global Strategies for Diversity and Inclusion for Walt Disney Parks and Resorts. In this role, she is responsible for cultivating a culture of inclusion, not only within the company, but also guest-facing. This includes the work that Disney is doing to ensure that all guests are truly welcome within the Disney parks. Two of the larger projects she is currently working on are the reimaginings of both Splash Mountain and the Jungle Cruise to ensure both attractions are culturally responsible and inclusive. Now, Smith's work has always been rooted in her passion for the power of inclusion, with the belief that everyone plays a role making the world a better place. A quote from Carmen Smith about her current role within Disney: "We create experiences that make people feel welcomed, seen, and heard, and let them know that their stories are important." So Carmen Smith right now is sort of this pioneer within Disney in their new phase, right? In this more, I hate to say it, woke phase that they're trying to do, that they're trying to cultivate within their parks and resorts and within the communities at large, to be very inclusive and to tell stories that matter.
Such an important role for the company, and she is really spearheading this kind of new territory for them. You know, this is not a role that has been around for a long time and is being defined by her, and will play such an important role in the messaging that the company produces for the parks for a long time to come.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And it's interesting to think about when you think of the resorts, a lot of people think of just sort of the rides that you go on, right? And how they should be inclusive. But she also is working to ensure that products within all of the shops at Disney are inclusive. And that doesn't mean just culturally inclusive. It also means physical inclusivity as well. If you think about where items are located on shelves, and if you think about packaging that's easy to open, she is working on all of that to make sure that it's accessible for everybody who visits the parks.
Accessibility is so important, and it's something that we completely disregard when you're able to physically just get around, but there are so many Disney fans out there that have challenges ahead of them when they want to visit the parks. And so it's so important that we make their time of it as easy as possible.
All barriers should be removed for all guests within the parks.
And let me tell you, the older I get, Patrick, I need barriers removed.
Fair enough. Yeah, this is an interesting role because it's such a new role for Disney and for many companies around the world in their strides to become more inclusive. So I'm excited to see where it goes, and I'm excited to track Carmen Smith's career as she's just getting started.
It'll be exciting to see how these changes are implemented and how they bleed into our everyday lives too. We know that Disney is on the forefront of a lot of technology that's developed and things like that. And while this type of initiative is coming very late in the company's history and should have been implemented sooner, now is the time where they can fully lean into it and make the changes that need to be made and help not only people get around the parks, but also hopefully inspire and influence the world as well.
Amen. And let me just say, The Princess and the Frog can't come soon enough.
Oh, I can't wait to see what that's going to look like. It's going to be amazing.
Yes, indeed.
Excellent choice, Patrick. And that takes us to my nominee. Yes, for Disney Legend status. And I'm nominating Dolores Vogt Scott, who, Patrick, is an administrator as well. She was Walt's longest-serving secretary and perhaps the most influential.
I mean, this woman, I can't wait for you to educate the Tweedles at home. She is extraordinary. She was extraordinary.
Talk about having the keys to the kingdom. This lady was a gatekeeper to Walt. And while we don't know a ton about her, she was so instrumental in the day-to-day activities of Walt's life and the business.
Yes, all you administrative assistants out there, take note. We see you. You are so important.
And speaking of administrative assistants, when it comes to Disney, Patrick, a lot of the Disney history that we know survives because of the skill and attention of the Disney secretaries.
Oh, that and so much more. So much more.
So Dolores grew up in Sheridan, Wyoming. Her brother owned the bank in Sheridan, and her grandparents owned the only five-star restaurant in Wyoming, the Copper Kettle, also located in Sheridan. Dolores started at the Disney studio in 1930, working as Roy O. Disney's secretary before Walt was like, she seems too good. I'm going to take her from you, Roy.
Jealous much?
Jealous much? She was stationed outside of Walt Disney's office and controlled access to the inner sanctum, so to speak. For decades, she was the primary gatekeeper for anyone wanting to see Walt. Of her early days with the company, Dolores stated, quote, "The Hyperion studio was a fun place to work. Everyone was so young and excited about what was being created. We all worked like dogs, but we enjoyed every minute of it," end quote. Now, Walt was old-fashioned and a bit paternalistic, as we all know, and when it came to his secretaries, he was especially so, but it was obvious that he respected them and gave them a great deal of authority and actively solicited their opinions on a variety of topics. Dolores had her own office and supervised Walt's personal bank account. Can you imagine, Patrick?
That feels like a lot of pressure.
Particularly when you're kind of trying to wrangle this cat that was Walt Disney, right? Like, you're like, rein it in, Walt. We need to control your spending. I know you're spending too much. Here's what you should be spending your money on. So she had a lot of influence in his personal life.
I imagine her stint with Roy Disney helped a lot with that.
Yeah, exactly. As we all know, Roy was really the kind of purse strings holder. So I'm sure he was working very closely in conjunction with Dolores to try to keep things under control. In fact, Roy often asked her, "How are Walt's finances?" And he would say, "Don't let him get involved in some crazy scheme. Let me know if there's something that doesn't seem right." So yes, Roy was very close to Dolores even after she was no longer his secretary.
She was a spy.
She was Roy's spy. One day, when the burdens got overwhelming, Walt told Dolores, quote, "Let's shut down the office. We've got Disneyland. We don't need the studio." Patrick, has your boss ever said, "Let's just go to a Disney park and close down the office"?
I do. I say it a lot.
Yeah, you do. And your boss is like, "Wait a minute, I need something."
But I'm already gone by then.
Employees often called Dolores to ask if Walt was in a good mood. The studio password for a bad mood became, quote, "Walt's got his wounded bear suit on."
It's more of a pass phrase, but okay.
It's a pass phrase, yeah. Dolores retired from the Disney studio in 1965, and she passed away on April 10th, 1981. So as I said, Patrick, we don't know a ton about her personal life, but we know that she was so influential to the studio, to the parks, to Walt's life, and she really had an extensive 30-plus year career with the Disney company.
I can't remember. I'm trying to think who played her in the movie, but you get a glimpse of her in the movie Saving Mr. Banks.
She wasn't actually the featured secretary in the movie, although you do see her for a bit in the movie. But Kathy Baker actually played Walt's other secretary because Walt often had two secretaries. And so Kathy Baker played Walt's other secretary, Tommy, in Saving Mr. Banks.
Right, yeah. There was one that sort of sat outside of his office and greeted guests, whereas his main secretary, Dolores, was almost more of like office manager for him, right?
Yeah, she was not the face greeting guests coming to Walt's office. She was more tied to the inner workings of the studio and, as I said, Walt's personal life.
So she became Pam in the office. You know?
Yeah, she was absolutely the Pam before the Pam. Yeah, so that is Dolores Vogt Scott, quite the contributor to the early days, the Hyperion studio days of the company, right on through the opening of Disneyland and on. She kind of was involved with it all.
There needs to be a movie, I feel like, not just within Disney, but a lot of the administrative assistants and secretaries at the time, what they were called, of these huge emerging companies like Walt Disney, like, I'm making it up, Microsoft or Apple or whatever. They must have some amazing, amazing stories to tell.
Absolutely. The interesting thing about that, though, is that I don't think they would ever talk about it. You know, I know that the administrative assistants, the secretaries that worked back then, they were privy to a lot of really confidential information, both logistically within the company and within their bosses' personal lives. And I'm sure they just took that stuff with them, like, to the grave, because that was just a part of their job, was to keep those secrets.
I imagine having been an administrative assistant to Walt Disney at the time in the Walt Disney Company was akin to being the president's secretary.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, who was more influential in the entertainment community and in the United States of America than Walt Disney?
Exactly.
Well, Patrick, that wraps up this episode's feature segment on the DL celebrating Women's History Month. I hope we did these amazing women some justice and allowed our Tweedles to learn more about their fantastic stories and lives.
Yes, absolutely. Something interesting to note when I was writing these stories, and I wonder if you came across the same thought, is that when we do on the DL with a lot of our male Disney legends, there's so much more history to read about, and there's so much more background about their lives. But when it comes to the women, not a lot was known about where they came from, what their previous jobs were before Disney. Just in general, there's just not much recorded about these extraordinary women, and that is a shame.
Yeah, you know what, Patrick? That sucks.
Indeed. It's so like you to boil it down into the simplest of terms, and it's always true.
Yeah, it's simply sucks, Patrick. We need to know more of these women's stories, and time's running out. You know, fortunately, we still have Carmen around, but these women who were so influential in the early days of Disney, who were so key to the development of Disneyland, you know, time's running out. Their time on this earth isn't going to be that much longer, and so we really need to capture these stories while we can.
For sure. And we, of course, will do our part on Gaze to the D to celebrate these women and the women to come for the entire year, right? Adam, not just this month. Of course, we are doing it this month in honor of Women's History Month, but we celebrate the ladies every day of our lives.
Every single day. And if you, Tweedles out there, have some ladies attached to Disney that you want us to celebrate and recognize on the podcast, we would be more than happy to do that. You can reach out to us on social media. That's Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at GDTD Podcast.
Or you can always leave us a voice memo or email at info@gazetothed.com. Hey, Adam.
Hey, Patrick.
My English breakfast tea is kicking in, and I have some energy.
Oh, perfect. Thank you for bringing that energy to the end of the show.
Yeah, you bet. A real snooze fest for the first the first 90 minutes, and here we are, energy at last. Well, that only means one thing, Adam. When Patrick gets his energy, it's Quick D time.
It is Quick D time. It is that classic segment that will probably be featured in some kind of podcasting Hall of Fame at some point when that is developed. People are going to be like, Quick D, that was really the moment in GDTD history.
People are going to take audio tracks and shoot them into space in a time capsule for sure.
That's what they're going to do because for some reason that's what's going to happen.
And the reason is not really to preserve it, it's just to get rid of it. Shoot it into space.
That's right. There's no other way to avoid listening to a podcast than shooting it into space.
That's right. That's exactly correct. Well, Tweedles, for those of you who don't know what Quick D is, neither do we really. But a brief explanation is it's where Adam and I ask each other a question we've not been privy to prior to recording, and we answer it off the cuff. It's a real mess. It's a real mess of a situation, but we continue to do it. Who knows why?
Gluttons for punishment?
We want to punish everyone for listening to the full episode, and here it is, Quick D.
How far do you think our average audience numbers drop when they get to the Quick D segment?
Immediately. If you look at our statistics behind when people shut off, it's really that last 5 minutes that never get listened to.
Who needs it? Yet we still do it. Okay.
They hear Quick D and they quickly get away from us.
All right, Patrick. Well, let's just get through this, I guess.
Yep, this is only for my mother, apparently. Well, Adam, I have a question for you. Now, sadly, as many people know, Disney is going to be shutting down many of its stores across the country and focusing more on the e-commerce side of sales, which obviously, Adam, it obviously means that Gaze to the D should grab those brick and mortar stores real quick and open some shops of our own. Now, talk to me. Talk to me about what might we call these stores and what our Tweedles can expect us to sell, maybe some in-store experiences. Walk me through it.
I'm happy to walk you through it. Yeah, so Disney stores shutting a majority of them down, going to switch to those online sales. Makes sense, but I was thinking last week, when you wanted a little Disney fix and couldn't get to the parks, it was always exciting to go to the Disney store and just kind of be in that theming for a bit, but no longer, Patrick.
No longer. They're taking it away from us.
Fortunately, we have the funds to purchase that real estate. Patrick and I really are real estate moguls, and we're going to switch over the stores, and they're going to be called D-Marts.
Yes, they are.
And we're going to sell a full line of clothing. Yes, we're going to have a clothing line. We're going to have a home line. We're going to get into pharmaceuticals. And we're also going to be giving away for free vaccine.
Oh, I like it. I like it. Apparel and pills.
So clothing obviously is kind of self-explanatory, right? I mean, we already sell T-shirts at gazetothed.com in our merch store. We're just going to continue that and move into more of a couture side of things, Patrick. A lot of GDTD bustiers, a lot of GDTD kind of modern culottes, a lot of those ugly sneakers that the designers seemed to gravitate towards, but no one really wears.
Fair. Let's make sneakers a thing again.
So a lot of chic clothing, as I mentioned, housewares. I'm talking about dishes. I'm talking about a full furniture line.
With our faces on it, so you too can sit on our faces.
Wow, you went there. I didn't, but I'm proud of you for it. And pharmaceuticals. I mean, everybody has something they're dealing with, and we just want to be able to help you out, So whether you have a headache or whether you have gout, I mean, who gets gout? That's dumb. But we're willing to help you out, headache to gout.
From H to G. And let's be clear, if you've listened to an episode of GDTD podcast, you do have a headache.
You will be left with a headache, and so you will therefore need to stop into D-Mart.
D-Mart, all your needs are met.
And I said vaccine. Vaccine for free, for all. Come on in, get your vaccine. It will turn you gay if you're not already gay, but isn't that a positive?
It's a Vax Queen.
Yes, Vax Queen.
And that's my new drag name.
All right, Patrick, here is my question for you, my friend.
Work.
As we talked about in our feedback from last week's episode featuring our spoiler-free review of Raya and the Last Dragon, Clint sent in some feedback and pointed us to some articles. And one of the articles he sent explains why Kelly Marie Tran replaced Cassie Steele in Raya and the Last Dragon as the voice of Raya. Patrick, I don't know if you know this or not, but I was originally cast in a Disney film as a voice for a character, and I'm ready to have this experience explained on the podcast. It's too close to my heart. It's too painful for me to talk about, but would you please explain to the Tweedles what role I was originally going to voice in a Disney animated film and why I was let go?
I will indeed. It is a story that we have agreed not to talk about, so I'm glad that you're opening the vault on your emotions today here on Gaze to the D.
I conferred with my therapist, and she thought it would be a great idea for me to expel this negative energy that's been just hanging over my head. And it's time, Patrick. I need you to help me through this process.
Fair enough. I feel like we have to go pretty far back to an old feud of yours between you and Angela Lansbury,
That bitch.
Yeah, for sure.
That f***ing bitch.
Oh,
yeah.
dear. That's aggressive, but I understand. Again, this is a safe space because no one is listening at this point. But for those of you who have stuck around with us, those brave few souls, Adam and Angela Lansbury, their feud goes way back to grammar school. Well, they are both the same age.
Okay. Oh, that's rude.
Well, Angela Lansbury stole his tea one day. And don't ever steal Adam's tea and cookies. If you know anything about Adam, it's don't steal his tea and cookies.
Don't steal my tea. And if on top of that you steal my cookies, look out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, ironically, that feud was never squashed, but Adam, later on in years, many years later, was cast as Mrs. Potts in Beauty and the Beast.
It was the role I was born to play, Patrick.
It really was. A fun fact, originally, the role was actually going to be called Mr. Hotz, actually.
They were going against type in casting that role, yeah.
They were. He was actually going to be a kettle that served hot chocolate, so that's why it was called Mr. Hotz.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't based on my looks then.
No, it sure was not. And listen, Angela Lansbury at the time was hard up for some work. She was, I think, tale as old as time. She was on the streets during this time, turning tricks. Little 3-card Monty, you know. And Don Hahn actually came across her one day. He was actually playing 3-card Monty, looked up and realized it was Angela Lansbury who was shuffling those cards, and he said, "Ma'am, we need to get you back in the studio. It's time. It's time." Just at that time, Adam was having one of his usual meltdowns on the set, throwing microphones, throwing some dishes around, and I think we all know how the story ends. Angela Lansbury comes in, replaces Adam as Mr. Hotz. They realize she is not a man, renamed it Mrs. Potts, and the rest is history.
Wow. It feels so good to be relieved of that kind of legacy of hate I've been holding in my heart.
I mean, listen, I understand the turmoil within you, but I think that you should just find some joy in that. Because of you, Angela Lansbury had a new career. You got her off the streets, Adam.
You're welcome, Angela Lansbury.
And the world, really.
And the world. That will do it for this episode of Gays Do the D. Thanks for listening. To become a patron of the podcast, visit our website at gaysdothed.com/donate. For a donation of any amount, you can receive exclusive Gays Do the D content and help us continue to bring you the very best Disney news and discussion. Continue the conversation after this episode on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at GDTD Podcast, and submit your questions or show ideas to info@gaysdothed.com. Have a great week, everybody. See you real soon.